Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this live event, broadcasted from the Netherlands. We have participants from around the globe in a variety of time zones, so enjoy your morning coffee, afternoon tea or your evening snack while we get this started. Jelle de Rooij, Senior Manager Supply Chain Solutions of Holland International Distribution Council, will introduce today's program and the speakers and will moderate today's event. Jelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Justine. Welcome, everybody. Very nice you're here this morning or afternoon. I'd like to kick off by telling what we do as HIDC, in case you don't know us yet. We are a non-profit council and we represent and promote the Dutch logistics industry. We have around 300 members, and at the core of our member base are logistics service providers. We help foreign shippers with setting up their supply chain for the European market, either redesigning or when entering Europe in a new way. We do this in a variety of industries, for example, high tech, but also life sciences, and in close cooperation with partners around the globe, like US Commercial Services or also the NFIA. A few reasons why the Netherlands is the gateway to Europe. Well, we are the #1 entry point for overseas products. About a third of products that enter the European market comes in through the Netherlands, through the main ports Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and then distributed to the neighboring countries and all the other markets in Europe. There's a large consumer base with about 170 million consumers in a 5-kilometer radius. So it's a logical stepping stone for the European market. As HIDC, we're also very proud that we're listed as a #1 logistics hub in Europe, also by the DHL Global Connectedness Index or other lists of the World Economic Forum or IMD. Well, today we thought it was very important to zoom in on the changes the medical device regulations will have in May this year. And we would like to shed light in 3 aspects. First, as an authorized representative, also as the MDR importer, and last but not least, as the logistics service provider. So I would like to hand over to Ronald Bouwmans, Senior Consultant at Emergo, to shed some light on the authorized representative situation. Ronald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jelle, and let me share my screen. One moment. And thank you all for joining. So I think we have now the slides, my slides, right? I work for Emergo, which is a consulting organization, and one of the services we provide is in-country representation, and part of that is the European Representative Service. Our European head office is in The Hague. If you know The Hague, you know this spot. Well, if you're Dutch, you know this spot. It's right in the center of The Hague, very close to the ministries, very close to the parliament, very close to the palace of our king, and very close to over 100 embassies. So we're right in the center of Middle Earth. Today, I'm going to tell you something about the concepts of importation and what you need to understand to fully grasp what is meant by importation, the role of the authorized representative, and something on considering potential partners for that service. Now, importer, you can look at that from 3 perspectives. The first is the logistics perspective. That's the company physically handling the product as it moves across the border. So that's one perspective looking at it. The customs perspective is another. The customs means that you take care of the taxes, the duties, a lot of the paperwork, and some shipment-related certificates, like health certificates for, say, livestock or something. And then you have the regulatory perspective, and that means that is the importer that creates access to the particular market. Then we talk about creating conditions before you can actually start shipping the products. If you look at the distribution chain within the EU, with an EU-based manufacturer, it's quite straightforward. The manufacturer can supply the devices directly to the user, or they can use a distributor or a chain of distributors. That distributor can already be quite a complex operation where they use a 3PL service provider. That all depends on the type of device, product, device, or market that you're in. But things can get very complex if you come from outside the EU. Again, you can see the manufacturer, but he cannot reach the user directly. It must go through an importer, and that can be an organization that combines the customs import and the physical importation. They may even also take the distributor role, and then they need to reach the user. Now, the regulatory importer and authorized representative, the AR, they are conditions that need to be met. So you need to have that condition. And if you look at the typical 3PL service provider, that's typically the physical importer, but they can do a lot of other things as well. They can actually do the distribution, take care of customs. That all depends on what you want to do. But later today, you'll hear more about that. But that's just to put it all into perspective. So if you talk about getting devices onto the market, you need an authorized representative. And I'll discuss those tasks, that role further. But you also need an importer, and you actually need 3 types of importers simultaneously. Authorized representative still there?
Yeah, maybe you could repeat the start of the slide, Ronald.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was kicked out, but you can see the slide still. Okay. Now, if you look at the role of the authorized representative, that's described in the Medical Device Regulation Article 11. You must have a single authorized representative. You must mandate an authorized representative for a single generic device group that is defined in a specific way, but you have generic device groups. You can have only one authorized representative for each generic device group. Suppose you have an organization that has acquired an IVD manufacturer, so they have an authorized representative from the medical devices, and then they have an authorized representative for the IVDs. Those are different organizations. That can happen, and that's fine under the MDR. Of course, there is some efficiency if you can combine that, but it is allowed to do that. It's very important for to understand that the authorized representative can terminate a relationship with the manufacturer, can terminate the mandate if the manufacturer acts contrary to the regulation. So if the manufacturer is not compliant, the authorized representative must terminate the agreement. And that's a legal requirement. So there's no room for discussion there. It's just a requirement. He has to do that. That's also to protect the authorized representative. If they do that, they must inform the competent authority in the notified body if there's a notified body involved. And that means that that it is important to keep that to remain compliant in the eyes of the authorized representative. And there's a very good reason for that, because the authorized representative is liable for defective devices on the same basis, jointly and severally, with the manufacturer. And that means that if a European citizen gets injured by a device, they can go both to the manufacturer or the authorized representative, and both have to handle that. You can change authorized representative, but as you can see, there is some skin in the game for the authorized representative when you talk about responsibilities and liability. So changing the authorized representative is there's a strict procedure for that. It can be done. It's not overly complex, but if you're considering changing an authorized representative, I strongly recommend doing that before May 26. Now, what does the authorized representative do? They look at the declaration of conformity. Has it been drawn up? Was the appropriate conformity assessment procedure followed? So is there a certificate? They will look at the technical documentation. Is technical documentation there? So they verify the drawing up of the technical documentation, but they do not review it. Especially if a notified body has looked at it, they will not redo their job. Of course, if a manufacturer says, yeah, we have a risk management file, and you look at the risk management file, and the risk management file said there are no risks, then you know that's box is not checked. You know that's not a risk management file. So yeah, it's not strictly not reviewing it, but it's a light version of it. The AR must keep a copy of the technical documentation available for the authorities. It's a legal requirement. Now, what you see is that various authorized representatives have different solutions for that. We have a very practical solution where we rely on the technical documentation of the manufacturer but have easy access to it. If the authorities ask, the authorized representative can communicate on behalf of the manufacturer, especially if the manufacturer is not cooperating. This is crucial. Then the authorized representative will use the text file to communicate with the competent authorities. So there is the communication can be quite delicate. What you cannot ask your authorized representative to do is to influence the compliance of your device. So if you think there's something wrong, you cannot go to your authorized representative and ask, can you change that and make it better? Of course, many authorized representatives also act as consultants, and there you can have a consulting organization under a consulting agreement. The consultant providing advice on how to do it, but they are not controlling or influencing the compliance of the device. In general, authorized representatives will not interact with importers. That is parallel. It's a separate line of communication. But importers may reach out to the authorized representative in case of vigilance cases, and if there are field safety corrective actions, there may also be communication between the authorized representative and the importer. There are some transitional issues. The MDR, authorized representative, as defined in the MDR, they must have a mandate for all devices placed on the market from May 26. So also the so-called legacy devices, where medical devices rely on the certificates from the Active Implantable Medical Devices Directive or the Medical Devices Directive. So the legacy devices must also be covered by a mandate. Your authorized representative may require certain measures from the manufacturer to be covered for liability. We have certain arrangements for that, but and I know other authorized representatives have other, but yeah, they will ask questions about that. And of course, your authorized representative will do some thorough checks on the technical documentation. And of course, they will want to have access to all updates to your technical documentation. So that there's a lot of communication going back and forth. In short, treat your AR as a close friend. You need them in times when things get rough. You really need their support. So how do you select an authorized representative? Well, if you only need a name on a label, if you can do all the things that an authorized representative is responsible for, if you can do a lot of that yourself, if you think you can do that, yeah, you may get away with a very simple authorized representative. But I would rather recommend going for a partner that can really help you access the EU market. Vigilance reports. Yeah, you can. The MDR allows the manufacturer to the non-EU manufacturer to handle vigilance reports themselves directly, but they can also ask the authorized representative to do that. And if you look at an organization like Emergo, we have multiple vigilance reports per day. That's not because we have so bad clients, but we have so many. And just the number of clients means that we have routine there. And maybe 3 or 4 times per year we have really complex cases, and then we have the routine to handle them as well. Of course, if you only want to have access to the European market, you can go to any authorized representative, but maybe you want to go to a company that reaches other markets as well. Like Emergo, we can also act as a US agent or help you accessing the Chinese or Japanese market or Brazil or, well, most markets globally. And of course, you may want to look for an authorized representative that also can help you with your regulatory consulting. Now, sorry. Most authorized representatives offer that service, but there are differences in quality and there are differences in available expertise. For example, Emergo has a lot of expertise in many fields. We work together with an authorized representative specializing in IVDs, and they have very good expertise in IVDs. So if that's really critical, yeah, you may want to go to them, or you may want to set up a good cooperation with Emergo so we can reach out to them if there's a problem. Obviously, an authorized representative needs to be part of the needs to be ISO 13485 certified, which is the quality management system for medical devices. So, in summary, if you want to access the European market, you need partners, and you need good partners, partners that can really help you in getting access to the market, and partners that will also be there if there is a problem, if you need to solve something. And top right corner, the AR, only 2 letters, but it is a crucial partner. Okay, thank you for your attention, and I will be ready to pick up some questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roland. And indeed, please post your questions in the chat box so we can answer them at the end of the session. Now let's have a look at the role of the MDR importer and hand over to Edgar, Managing Director of MedEnvoy Global. Edgar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jelle. I'm going to share my screen as well. Hope you can all see this. Oops. Yep. Yeah, thank you, Jelle, for the introduction. I'm thrilled to be here. Before I joined the medical device world, I actually used to work for HIDC myself. So it's a real pleasure to be back with you folks and work with my former colleagues to do this presentation. I'll go into the role of the MDR importer as introduced by Ronald. As I said, it's an important role to ensure compliance when you're placing devices on the European market. But before going into the details of the importer, introduce our company. We are a very young company. We were established only in September last year in preparation of the changes in the MDR. But we, and I'm talking about we, our leadership team has a long-lasting experience in medical devices. So, for instance, René van der Zandt is one of the other partners, is the former owner and president of Emergo. So he carries a lot of experience in the medical device field, of course, and our third partner, Stefan Tuschen. He's a former managing partner of the Boston Consulting Group and heading up the medical device group in Boston, within Boston Consulting. With the three of us, we have a long-lasting, experience in the medical device world. So, a bit of a background on our company. What we provide is a service that is minimally invasive for the manufacturer to provide a robust and cost-effective importer service that integrates in the workflow of the legal manufacturer, but to make sure that it's in full compliance with the MDR and the IVDR. And Ronald already touched on this. Say the changes in the MDR, and say they come about in a couple of ways. There's a couple of elements that have to do with the classification and the certification of the devices, but we do see that a lot of companies don't realize that there is new, more explicit obligations defined in the MDR. And so, for instance, the role of the importer under the MDD, it's not specified in the MDD, but in the Blue Guide of the European Union, the importer is already recognized. But in the MDR, the role of the importer is made more explicit. But this creates a lot of confusion, and Ronald already talked on this. When you just say importer, a lot of views come to mind for people, and we therefore say, well, you have to look at those three flows: the physical, the fiscal, and the MDR flow. And although these flows are very much interconnected, they can be organized independently. So you can have, let's say, a logistics company work on your physical and your fiscal flow, and have a separate entity work on your MDR importation, so to say. This is good to understand, because that's also, let's say, that was the basis of our business model. So drilling down into that role of the importer, according to what is said in the legislation, the importer places a device from a third country on the EU market. And the importer has to make sure that only devices are placed on the market that are in compliance with the MDR. And the importer has to verify that compliance. And coming back to, let's say, the liability that Ronald mentioned for the AR, also the importer is liable. So when the importer places a non-compliant device on the market, the importer can be held liable. But it's also good to understand that the importer doesn't have to be the entity who does the actual transportation, coming to the previous slide I showed, but also it's not an entity that has to take title of goods. And that's where we get a lot of questions these days from distributors from Spain and Italy that say, but the importer is the entity who buys the product from, let's say, a US manufacturer and then sells them to distributors in Europe. That is not necessary. That can be the model, but it is not necessary. And another thing that causes a lot of confusion is that in the verification process, to make sure that the devices are compliant, there's no real requirement for physical inspections. But when you look at maybe the idea that was behind the importer, you could think if there was one central importer where all the goods would come in, their physical inspections could take place before you move the products into Europe. But there is no real requirement to do the physical inspections. Then you can come back to the question, who can be the importer? And let me try and first explain how you can become an importer, because you can appoint an importer, but it's really good to understand that as a legal entity, you qualify as an importer. So if you as a US manufacturer would ship your devices to a distributor, let's say in Germany, the moment that is a direct flow and the German distributor takes on the goods, they are seen as the importer. They qualify at that moment in time as the importer. And with that, they immediately have to fulfill all the obligations that come with the role of importer. That's also what a lot of people start now realizing when they start seeing the real implications of what that means to be importer. You see that they give some pushback. So looking at, let's say, which entities can qualify as importer, you can see 5. It's the US-based legal entity of legal manufacturing. It could be the European authorized representative. It could be a distributor, a third-party logistics provider, or an independent entity as an importer. And that is what we provide as MedEnvoy. We are an independent importer. Now let me go into, let's say, in a bit more detail, what are the pros and cons of each of those groups. So let's take the AR as an importer. Could be good because you have only one authorized representative. So you have central control. You have an entity that is fully dedicated to MDR and IVDR. And the importer has to be visible, has to be identifiable on the device or the packaging or a document accompanying the device. That could be, for instance, the IFU. So you would only have one entity that would be identifiable as the importer. On the downside, we also see that there could be a potential conflict of interest. If you have an authorized rep and an importer and the same entity, questions can be raised, is there a potential conflict of interest? But there's also different levels of engagement. As Ronald indicated, an AR reviews the documentation up front. The importer reviews documentation on each and every shipment. And so there's totally different levels of engagement in the process. And so far, we've, myself coming from Emergo, also Emergo decided at one point in time to say, no, we're not going to be providing the importer role to our customers. And so far, we haven't seen any other authorized reps fulfilling that role. So looking at logistics companies, well, of course, a lot of companies and the folks from Healthcare know this also very well. Their customers saying, well, you are already importing my devices, so why not take on this role? Good question. But when looking at, let's say, what would be the downsides of using your 3PL as your importer, it's supply chain is their core business, regulatory not per se. And if you have multiple logistics companies, you're going to spread the control over these entities. And again, the importer has to be identifiable on the device, the packaging, or document. Then you have, let's say, the logistics of the naming. Well, what goes for the authorized representative also goes for the 3PL. And we've been talking to a lot of logistics companies that indicate, yes, we can perform that role, but we don't want to perform that role because we don't want to have the obligations associated with the role, and especially determining, let's say, placing on the market, that comes with the liabilities. So these are aspects why a lot of logistics companies also say, we don't want to take on the role of importer. What other solutions do you have? The legal manufacturer, as said, if the legal manufacturer, the EU entity of the legal manufacturer, would be the importer, full control. It's your own organization. It would be your name on the device packaging or the document. On the downside is that you need to have that legal entity. The importer has to be established in the European Union. And you have to make sure that that entity is capable in dealing with the obligations of the importer. So a PO box cannot be the importer because the authorities might call and then somebody has to pick up the phone. And you have to make really sure that you can meet the obligations for the importer in that entity. And then coming to another entity that's been viewed upon as saying, hey, that's an easy one to be the importer, distributors. And also here, especially when manufacturers ship X works, manufacturers say, well, they're already importing. Yes, indeed, but you're talking again about the fiscal and the physical side, not per se the MDR side. But if they do act in that capacity, then, as I said, they then qualify to be the importer. But also here there are a couple of cons. The moment that you take your role as importer seriously, you do want to see maybe IP-sensitive information of the manufacturer. Because if you're liable when devices are placed on the market that are not compliant, you want to see what is the manufacturer doing, what is the device that we're bringing to the market. Also here, the distributors, their role is not per se regulatory. Their role is to market and sell the devices. And you can have multiple importers. So you can have, if you have 30 distributors, you can have technically 30 importers. But also means that if you're spreading the control over all these entities, you have less control. And also here, if you're using your distributors as the importers, their names have to be on the packaging, on the device, or on documentation. So that creates maybe long lists of companies. And what we mentioned, what I mentioned before on the importers as the authorized reps and the logistics companies, we do see that a lot of distributors, when they realize what the obligations are of the importer that they give pushback. They also don't want to be that importer. They don't want to have that liability. They don't want to, let's say, do everything that is needed to meet the obligations. And it comes then to the final option, the fifth option that manufacturers have. You can have an independent importer. And again, it would be one entity, central control, an entity that is focused purely on this activity. And again, you would have one name on the device. The downside being, of course, you have to have another additional operator in your team, in your distribution chain. So these are, let's say, the different flavors that you have to work with your importer. And as said before, that role is mandatory. The importer will be visible in UDAMET. So if you don't have an importer listed in UDAMET, that's low-hanging fruit for the authorities to see, hey, why are you not compliant? So then, looking at the role of the importer, what does the importer do? As said, it has to do with each and every importation into the EU. So mainly the verification. So the importer has to verify if the CE certificate is there, if the declaration of conformity has been drawn up, if the labeling is correct, if the authorized rep, the importer and the manufacturer are clearly identified and correctly identified. When applicable, UDI assignment and UDAMET registration. So this has to happen for each and every importation into the EU. But also, if there's specific transportation and storage conditions that have to be met, the importer has to make sure that those have been met throughout the distribution chain. And last but not least, tracking of shipments within the EU. This is also a crucial role to make sure that it is clear where the goods have been delivered within the EU. So these are the activities of the importer related to importations. But there are also activities that are event-driven. So for instance, complaints or non-conforming devices, or whenever there's need to report to competent authorities. These are events that where an importer can play a role. I say can because we also, from our point of view, say that your authorized representative also has certain tasks to do in this field. You just have to make sure that it's clear who's going to do what, so that no things fall between the cracks. And then this is just a snapshot of how we do that verification process. So the moment that we work with, let's say a US company, before the company starts shipping devices to Europe, they will send us proof of compliance. And we will check if that shipment that's about to be shipped is indeed compliant. And we keep record of that proof of compliance so that we know from the get-go that what has been shipped does indeed meet the requirements of the MDR. And with that, we give the go-ahead, the approval for the manufacturer to ship the devices to Europe. And then a whole other chain is happening. So now let's talk about, let's say, the economic operators in the United Europe, because as we've seen now, this is going to be live and kicking as of May 26th. So you have to have your European authorized rep, you have somebody taking care of your logistics, and somebody taking care of your MDR importations. But the same situation is true in the UK. After Brexit, UK no longer part of the EU. So also in the UK, you need to have a UK responsible person. You might want to have somebody doing your logistics, and you need a UK importer. And then when Switzerland, in the current legislation, there is a mutual recognition agreement in place. Most likely, very likely, this will not be the case after May 26th. So from that moment on, Switzerland will be seen as a third country in the EU, as let's say a third country for the EU as well. So also there, you may need a Swiss AR, you may have a logistics provider, and you may need a Swiss importer. So when you look at this picture and you say, okay, for each region, for each territory, I might need 3 operators. So that means that when you want to cover Europe, you might end up with 9 different operators. That's, of course, a big challenge. So you may want to look for partners that can help you make sure that you are good to go, let's say, in all these regions. And you may, let's say, end up with 3 partners. So ultimately, this might be an option for you, that you look for a partner who can handle your, let's say, all your representation functions in the 3 regions, cover your logistics in these 3 regions, and be the importer in the 3 regions. And the benefit, if you would choose companies like Emergo or a HealthLink or MedInfo, is that these all are in the Netherlands, and with that you could claim that maybe the Netherlands is a gateway to Europe when you look at this. But another plus point would be that then all these entities fall under the same competent authority, namely the competent authority here in the Netherlands. With that, Jelle, I'd like to give the floor back to you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Edgar, and I see some questions coming in, so we will tackle those after Kay, her presentation. Kay will shed some light on the logistics providers' role in dealing with the MDR regulations. Kay is Vice President of Sales at HealthLink, also one of HIDC's members, and I'd like to give the floor to you, Kay.
All right, great, thank you, Jelle. Can you see my presentation? Is the slides up and running?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for a great presentation by our strategic partners, Emergo and MedEnvoy. We've been working with them to start our MDR readiness for quite some time, so we all know each other well. And of course, that's the reason we're here today in partnership with the HIDC to walk through our MDR readiness strategy and how we started to prepare ourselves and our company and our manufacturers. So we'll start today to walk through a couple of points in our agenda. This will help us kind of understand some of the things that we've done just from a company, who we are, what we do, what our role is in the supply chain. We'll touch base on the UDI, of course, that seems to be a word we're all starting to hear pretty frequently, along with some milestones, achievements we like to say here at HealthLink of things we've done to get ourselves ready, and of course to follow that with a couple of question and answers. All right, to start with who we are, a little quick introduction on HealthLink Europe and International. We were founded in 2005 with the concept to support the life science industry, including human tissue products specializing in logistics, temperature-controlled warehousing, fulfillment and freight management, as well as back office services that were important to our manufacturers that did not have an infrastructure, including multilingual customer service, taking orders from the field, and the all-important VAT deferment that you heard Jelle mention earlier, the reason why we utilize the Netherlands to be an import location within Europe. HealthLink has focused on the life science industry. We're growing our portfolio today. Roughly over 175 manufacturers are in our portfolio, operating 2 ISO 13485 facilities in the Netherlands, as well as an FDA registered and ISO 13485 facility in Memphis, Tennessee. Of course, that's kind of the logistics hub within the States. So we're operating both sides of the platform, if you will, both sides of the pond, with the same quality management system and the same IT platform. This gives us a little bit of kind of known as a total solution provider, which helps our life science industries focus on their core competency while we help them do all of the back items that we can do to support Class 2A or B, even a Class 3 device. We also support tissue clients within our Netherlands platform. We are part of the Base Logistics group that you see here on the screen. As of 2017, we were acquired. We've been operating with Base as a partner for the last 12 years, utilizing their in-house software we'll touch base on in just a second, called Clary. The Base Logistics Group was founded in 1994, so they've got over 25 years of experience in service parts and logistics with a focus on high-tech products, service, and repair. And they are also the creators of our WMS TMS platform that you're hearing us talk about today in regards to how we're offering that full track and traceability. And then in 2019, we added to our group SLS, which is an in-and-out service delivery partner focusing on the Benelux region. And they have joined our platform as well because they utilize Clary to get products where they need to go and keep visibility. The transitions are a little slow. Here you can see a little bit about how we all tether together using that software and kind of our division within our 4 organizations. So our concept enables our manufacturers to benefit from the combined strengths of various specialties. So whether we need to help you with inbound freight or outbound freight, we can contact our base logistics team to help with those imports and exports. Same with in the night delivery. If we've got a strategy to set up to get parts to a technician in the field, all of us are utilizing this WMS TMS platform that's connected to around 400 different integrators to see that on-time delivery performance that we need to get the product where it needs to go. So when we're looking at our IT platform that we utilize, not just in the Netherlands facilities, but also in the US, that order to cash is also something we have to be able to support. We do have our own ERP system that has an EDI interface into Clary. So we can offer an option to connect to our Clary system as well as our ERP system when handling these front office functions like order intake or back office services like accounts receivable management. The IT platform allows us to stock and store all of our items within one central location. So for our customers, logging into a remote web portal access at any time to export data is at their fingertips. That 24/7 platform is managed by a team of control tower specialists, both in the EU and the US. So no matter what we're asked of our clients, we can be available to address questions through a ticketing platform that's online as well. So we feel that this Clary system is the way that we're going to help look to Edgar and his team when we're setting up our customers to be able to see what items we're bringing into Europe and help him understand what has been received and what's been shipped out at all times. So our customers can actually share that information with them to have minimal disruption to the supply chain. So what sets HealthLink apart is not only this tailor-made approach to support our clients, but we offer our services on a menu card, allowing you to pick and choose what services HealthLink will support. That helps us scale with your business as you grow. Our multilingual call center can answer the phone in your company name, performing front-level phone support for frequently asked questions on your product. We also, in times, will field complaints that we can pass back to our EU rep or the manufacturers as well to make sure that we're getting the information where it needs to go in the event of a worst-case scenario. Financial services is where we step in to help set up. Our American customers usually don't have a VAT number, so the VAT management is a general fiscal representation where our tax team is coming in to help you set up a VAT number under our customer's name. Also getting Article 23 and we can ship through that VAT deferment or simplification rule we all know, which utilizes the location of the Netherlands. And of course, not only in the Netherlands, we can support other options for VAT, such as the UK. You may also need to set up a UK VAT number and a YORI number. So our tax team stands by to help with looking at each customer's end solution, such as their supply chain, to set up those financial needs where needed. And of course, our warehouse and logistics, we can support with value-add services at the direction of our manufacturers. We are again operating multiple locations of our own infrastructure, as well as supporting over 600 different strategic stock locations that utilize our Clary environment. So that means whether we're pick-packing and shipping from our own facility or one of our partner networks, such as the UK, for example, due to Brexit, we can still see all visibility through our Clary system and disposition product there physically, but be able to keep everything under one IT environment. So some of our facilities include our Moerdijk location for base logistics, specializing in high tech. That's about 27,000 square meters. You can see very large facility. We have our Den Bosch location for order to cash that helps with our Waalwijk facility. That is around 17,000 square meters. And of course, our Memphis, Tennessee facility is 13,000 square meters. So very large facilities that we're operating. The Memphis and Waalwijk facilities are dedicated to the verticals for just the life science industry. We can also talk about the component that we need to know is how to track and trace everything. So prior to products arriving, as Edgar has mentioned, for the importer of record status, we will request a pre-alert for our systems to be prepared. We want to make sure that our team knows what's coming in, and we have everything set in our scanners to be able to read the barcodes. Those barcodes are going to capture all the mandatory information in languages like GS1 or G10, so we can read a multitude of barcodes to ensure that we know the lot batch, serial number, etc., to be able to do full track and traceability, setting up rules within our platform for FIFO or FIFO principles. At the end of the day, our job is to be able to provide that full transparency and keeping you guys compliant. So during our implementation process, we too check to make sure that we have all the information needed to keep our MDR audits at bay, to keep our regulatory consultants happy, as well as keep the visibility there. And how do we do that? Well, of course, a live view, getting you real-time access. We can do a custom view, or it can be list or across a map. So here you can see an example. You're utilizing multiple strategic stock locations. This allows you to drill down to what is on our shelves within our partner or owned facilities, giving you real-time data that can be exported at any time, supporting any type of recall management. And the way we do this is as soon as something arrives on our back dock, we're scanning that product into our warehouses and placing it into our query environment for our team to see. So visual inspections will be happening to make sure it is a good device before we inbound it. If we see any issues, then we notify our team, our customers, and let them know they can resolve the issues. So again, our manufacturers drive the process end to end here at HealthLink with custom written work instructions and SOPs. So some of those value-add services that we're touching on, due to MDR, we've seen a lot of questions come out about their labeling updates, even an IFU update for multilingual. That's been a really hot button right now. So HealthLink has the ability to do that, so we can either print locally with our own printers, helping make sure that if there's a change or a last-minute update to an IFU, that gets put on your product. Of course, our manufacturers are always driving this process with a validated upfront procedure. We're never just doing something at our own direction. It's always under the guidance of the quality management system of our manufacturers, because they are the owners of the goods at all times while stocking and storing here at HealthLink. So you can see here we can do a couple of different value-add services. Our job is, again, to provide that visibility, whether we're completing a finished pack, taking products, multiple finished goods, and putting them all into a finished box. We still need to provide down to the kit level what is included in that finished good. So to get us ready, we kind of started this assessment a while back when the MDR was being announced. We had to take a really hard look at what our core services were. And of course, as we've all heard, we're more of a logistics provider with order to cash. Regulatory is not a strong focus. While we can give guidance and consultation, we want to make sure that we are kind of the hands, eyes, and ears behind the scenes. So we've been working the past year to set up in relationships with Emergo, because we felt when we transitioned our EU rep services, we wanted to make sure we had the experts for our manufacturers to utilize the RAM software. That regulatory affairs management software provides them the ability to get MDR ready from the EU rep standpoint when they don't have brick and mortar. Same thing with MedEnvoy. What is limiting to the disruption of a supply chain, but still can take that risk and responsibility to really give them their core niche lane to focus to keep everyone compliant. So we've been actively introducing everyone to the MedEnvoy team to start the conversations in advance of May to appoint an MDR. Readiness strategy. So to follow this up with a couple of questions, I know there's a lot of different takes on what MDR, and this is our view here that we want to just kind of touch base on is what is our role? Well, HealthLink has taken the position to be a service provider. Yes, we are an economic operator because we're supporting you doing business in Europe, and we too have to be compliant for MDD come May. So even if our customers are not switching or transitioning to MDR, we still want to get them ready for this transition because we need to make sure they're obliging to all of the different rules and regulatory obligations. So again, we don't take title or possession of the goods as we own this product. We're not a traditional distributor. So a 3PL kind of operates always under the direction of our manufacturers. So the roles that we want our customers to clearly define to us, so we understand where everyone's selecting, is a notified body, making sure they're MDR certified. There was a lot of question about how many notified bodies would be ready, and we're seeing more and more each day get their accreditation to be MDR ready. Appoint that EU rep if you don't have brick and mortar, or even if you have an entity, but it's a shell entity and it's not being staffed by personnel, you should still appoint an EU rep. And again, that's why we have the consultation of Emergo on hand for some of our customers. And last but not least, importer of record. HealthLink has never been an importer for our customers. We have been always operating as more helping with customs and financial services and the logistics aspects. So we do ask that they appoint a clear importer of record. And we've already heard today why that's important, as to have one identified, controlled central point that we feel is the most preferred option. So while we won't tell everyone how to set up their business, our job is to support them in whichever direction they take. This is our preferred method to be able to set up a shared infrastructure. MedEnvoy and Emergo already have a couple of customers we've been working with. So that's one of the things that we've already tried and tested. Everything's running smoothly, sharing information, and all of us are working well together. So I hope you guys found this webinar helpful today, and I'll pass it back to Yeli so we can jump into some frequently asked questions that you guys all probably have.
Thank you very much, Kay, for that clear outline. Yes, indeed, we have quite some questions, and we have still some time left, so that's very good. I'd like to kick off with the first question. Can the importer details be on the sales order invoice, or does it have to be on the IFU label? Maybe Edgar, you can answer that one.
Sure, I'll try. The MDR states that you have the options. It has to be either on the device, on the packaging, or a document accompanying the device. That's where there's a lot of room for interpretation. So what is a document accompanying the device? We always say when looking at the intent of the MDR, it's about traceability, about making sure that people can see who was involved in the distribution chain. And we say, look at that document that stays longest with the device in the distribution chain. So that's why we always say the IFU is a good place for that, or the label. But we also know that real estate, the label real estate is very expensive, and that you want to look for different options. But maybe yes, it could be on the sales order or the invoice, but then you don't, let's say, meet the original intent. So I would say that yes, you can, because it is not said that it cannot be the situation, but we would not advise it, because this document stays not with the device. Ronald, yeah, maybe you have something to add to that?
Yes. Well, basically, if you look at the user information, and this is part of the user information, that is that should be going with the device up to the point where it's taken into service. So then you need to understand the concept of taking into service. Basically, it is when the device is being used. That's the short definition of taking into service. So it needs to go there. And well, actually today I had a discussion with a client about devices being exported into Northern Ireland. That is an EU part of the EU, but also part of the United Kingdom. So it has a sort of mixed bag in terms of requirement that's on the label. And I discussed with MHRA that their devices will be fully European labeled, EU labeled, and then they put in a little bag, each of them, in a little bag with an additional sticker on that identifying the UKRP and the Northern Ireland importer. And that was fine. And all the information is there. At the moment the device is taken out of its package, that information is there. It's fine. So that's how you should approach it.
Okay, thank you very much, both. Another question is around the definition of a distributor or the LSP. In the current regulations, there is only referred to distributors. Medical device clients do not understand the difference between a distributor and an LSP, as an LSP is not mentioned in the EU medical device regulations. Can you further explain the difference between a distributor and an LSP? Yeah, maybe you can all put your answer into play here. Edgar, can you start?
Yeah, I think that comes into also the language. I still remember when working with for HIDC, we always got these questions. We're looking for a distributor, and I say, well, for distribution, and then we say, is it the commercial distribution or the physical distribution? And that for me is the main differentiator. So the 3PL, the logistics provider, is doing the physical distribution, whereas the distributor is doing the commercial distribution. And then I think, let's say, looking back at the definition for the MDR, it's where, let's say, the importer is the one that places devices on the market for the first time, and then the distributor is the one making them ready for use.
Clear? Ronald, Kay, anything to add?
Well, the MDR has a clear definition of the distributor, and it's anybody in the supply chain who's not the manufacturer or the importer. So yeah, that you have a distributor. They can come in many different shapes and sizes, and they should all take care that they only handle products that they can consider compliant. So yeah, it doesn't matter what type of distributor you have. So from that perspective, I strongly recommend that if you're handling medical devices, make sure you know what you're talking about and get some good advice if you have any doubts.
Thank you. Kay, any experience in this area?
We've had a lot of questions around the termination. Definitions here are pretty important. Again, I think it boils down to we don't take title of these goods. We're not making any decisions here at HealthLink from a logistics provider. So our job is to take direction from manufacturers of how we're handling it, the stocking, storage, operations of it, even how we're picking and shipping it. So they're very clearly defining for us as a manufacturer. And since we don't take title and always operate under our manufacturer's directions, we do not view ourselves as a distributor. So that is the reason we appointed ourselves as a logistics service provider.
Clear, thank you. Then I have another question for Edgar. Can MedEnvoy act as the switch? Well, it's mentioned AR, but I think importer. I thought this had to be located in Switzerland. Edgar?
Correct. For all these operators to function, so if it's the Swiss AR, the Swiss importer, the UK importer, the UK responsible person, you have to have a legal entity. So currently we don't have a legal entity, but we're considering it. So the moment that we get more clarity on what will happen with Switzerland when it comes to the mutual recognition agreement, then we'll act upon that. But yeah, if customers require us to, let's say, go into Switzerland as well and perform the role of a Swiss importer, then we will establish a legal entity so that we can perform that activity, yes.
Mm-hmm. There was actually another question also around the MRA between the EU and Switzerland. Are there any updates around that?
I think it's a good one for Ronald.
No. The situation is that the mutual recognition agreement is linked to the directives. At the moment, the MDR kicks into place. There's no mutual recognition agreement, and there's a big political thing blocking signing that. Let's summarize it to that. And if it would have been simple to solve it, it would have been resolved by now. So I think it's going to take, that's my best guess at this moment is it's going to take time. Now, from Switzerland to Europe, the European Commission has a very simple approach. They say, well, it's a third country, so third country rules apply. So you need an authorized representative and an importer if you're a Swiss company. That's very simple. The other way around, there's no information yet. So far, the Swiss authorities are just keeping their mouth shut. Now, I have one contact in Switzerland who is a bit deeper into that, and he said, well, he mumbled something, expect something that looks a bit similar like what the UK is doing. So, and the UK are allowing some transitional things happening. So what I expect is that around the beginning of May, we will get information from the Swiss authorities about these transitional arrangements. If not, I have no idea what's going to happen. So yeah, that's what I know about the Swiss situation so far.
I heard somebody
Stay
say, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. There was somebody from Swiss MedTech saying that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there's just no information about what the Swiss want and how they want to see it. So, Emergo, we have been discussing setting up an AR service for Switzerland, but we have just no idea. We cannot prepare anything. So yeah, we just don't. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. One last question for the three of you, actually. Now, with these changes coming up in May and looking at the current regulations, what will be the average time as a medical device supplier to, well, be compliant to the new regulations and the preparations you need to take there? What do you think? To start with you, Kay.
So as far as our team, for us to get them set up, we typically state around 12 weeks. And that's due to some of the fiscal representation work that we need to set up for Article 23. From an MDR standpoint, we're checking to make sure they have appointed or announced these 3 roles under MDR for us. Just knowing that we know who to contact should we field a complaint is important for HelpLink, since we are kind of answering the phone in the different languages on the same time zone for our customers. So as far as timeline, that's our full implementation process. For being MDR ready, I think it goes over to Emergo, the notified bodies, to kind of take it from there, depending on what the transition time looks like.
Okay, thank you. Ronald?
It depends on the complexity of the device. So at this moment, we have our team reviewers. They're fully blocked. So if you have a Class 1 device, they spend more time on Class 1 devices, self-certified devices, than notified body certified devices. But yeah, there are some pipeline issues right now. Also, the Brexit situation is adding to that, and Switzerland. So it's very difficult to put a timeline on it, but I think 12 weeks would be a fair estimate. So yeah, you're a bit late.
Okay, thanks. Edgar, anything to add?
Just 1 week is enough for us. No, kidding. Now we typically say between 3 to 5 weeks, but it also depends on how far is the manufacturer, because in our case, we have to go into the procedure of the manufacturer. And if the manufacturer takes a long time to adjust their own procedures, then that time has to be taken into account as well. So we are not so much the I wouldn't say the problem, but we request a lot of information which is readily available. But changing the current procedures to make sure that everything, all the information that we need can flow to us, that is what takes most time. But I heard from a Green Light Guru did a survey on the readiness of MDR, and they mentioned that I think it was mid-March, 18%, so 1/8 of the companies was ready for MDR. They expected 50% to be ready by May, but already 30% of the companies indicated that they will not be ready come May 26. So that just indicates, and I think that is mostly, let's say, surveys done in North America, but we do see now a lot of inquiries come in from Asia, where it seems like people say, "Oh wow, do we need to have an importer because I have an MDD? Yeah, I have a legacy device. I don't need an importer, right?" Yeah, you do. And then suddenly, if they realize that today, I fully agree with Ronald, then you're too late, because that is going to be a huge undertaking to be ready on time.
Yeah, clear. So it's fair to say that it's very important to act now if you're not started the process yet. With this, I'm looking at the time also. I'd like to thank all the speakers of today, and also thank the audience for attending the session. and we look forward to welcome you again soon at any of our webinars. Goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day and evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.